So you got some tips from careerists, from outside resources, but how about just putting this all together from within your value systems, from your experiences, from who you are? Like, what are some tips we could give to aspiring, professionals who may want a career in pre-sales or specifically a sales engineering position? This is a few part question. I'm just gonna list them off first, and then we're gonna comb down through each one of them. So the first would be what were some resources you studied upon? Who and how did you network? How did you practice and prepare for interviews? How did you conduct yourself in interviews, and any other tips or advice? So the first one is, what were some resources you studied up on? Because you said careerist. Okay. What other things? You said YouTube.
YouTube was a big help. It's allowed me to find a lot of the people who you would call pre-sales leaders. So I know I found a couple Chris White videos. I even got his book, The 6 Habits of a Pretty Highly Effective Sales Engineer. I got that book. I literally just started to just type in sales engineer. That's how I found the different names of them. That's how how this role is still so new. There's so many names for a sales engineer. You got pre-sales engineer, technical pre-sales engineer, solutions engineer, solutions consultant. All of these are, SE positions or SC positions. So I started looking up all of them. And when I say I engulf myself, I mean, like, my intention was to become a subject matter expert on the role. So anything that I could look up and I can find or I could read about, there are even some YouTube videos of some SEs who do like a day in the life of an SE, what I do on a daily basis. And what I started to find was it depends on the company. You know what I mean? A lot of SEs wear a lot of different hats in startups, the ones who, you might have to do a little bit more coding and technical stuff in more technical companies. If you're an SE, your demos might involve something a little bit more intricate than you just telling a prospect, hey, this is going to work for your business. You might have to actually go in and write a script or two. So maybe for some companies, being an SE that knows how to code is essential. You know what I mean? Me, I'm still learning how to code. So I knew that I could cross off. It started to help me shape what companies to go after or what companies I should be looking at to apply for. So resources became YouTube. Then another resource became LinkedIn. Huge resource, obviously. I think that one of the things that I would do is I would reach out to hiring managers or hiring recruiters for this position. If I saw a company that I liked, I would look up the company, try to understand their tech, what it is, the basic idea of what they do, and do I see myself doing these things? Is there a lot of, do I have to learn a lot to work for this company? Is that going to affect my adaptation if I were to start working there? And just looking at what the entrance barrier from my perspective would be, if you know what I mean. So a lot of times, if I would find a company that I liked, I would just find somebody who works there as an SE and reach out to them. And I would just say, hey, I saw that you guys were hiring. I just wanted to ask a couple questions about, your role and what you do there and things like that. And of course, this is also a form of networking. You increase your network on LinkedIn. You also get more information. And I'll say this, interviewing SEs was so helpful because I got to understand the role even more outside of my own personal research, the practical stuff, the stuff that you won't get when you're learning about it, you'll get from somebody who's actually doing it. You know what I mean? So even in the pre-sales collective, another resource, just reaching out to SEs and just asking, hey, can we have a one-on-one? I'd really like to ask you some questions about your experience as an SE and some of the things that you would probably ask yourself looking back and things like that. So LinkedIn, the pre-sales collective, YouTube, those were all great resources for me. What's another part of the question? There was a lot in that question.
Yeah. So you talked about the resources, and could you dive a little bit deeper again, like who, and how did you network? It could sound like it's reiterating, but I think it shows a little bit more of detail if we could talk about that specifically.
Okay, so let's see. Obviously, I felt as though, being pre-sales leaders and the people who started the pre-sales collective, I reached out to James and Yuji and I'm like, hey, I'm settling in, I'm shifting from, a direct sales role and I want to be a pre-sales engineer. I want to do sales engineering. Can we have a one-on-one? Can I ask you about your experience? Can I ask you about your background? I loved asking people about their background. And this is how I know most SEs, their story starts with, yeah, I just kind of fell into the role. And I think that's just so interesting because a lot of them did. A lot of them were programmers for a while and they could just speak to the product. So they could just speak to demoing it for, prospective clients and customers. James, his background and understanding, and even why him and Yuji built the pre-sales collective was such an interesting thing to me. And it helped me gain insight for what they were trying to do, but also what this role is for and why it's needed. So as I started to understand more, the questions that I started asking different SEs started to get, a little bit more specific. And because I knew what questions to ask, once again, asking the right questions, you just attract the right people and you attract the right answers to you. I reached out to Craig Vitter, who was, really, really helpful with, allowing me to interview. He did mock interviews with me. He wanted to make sure, like, while I was interviewing my demos, he's like, hey, let me see your demo. And this is somebody I met on the internet through the pre-sales collective. He was just very invested in me. Not one person, not one SE that I've ever met so far has said, oh, I hate my job. They all love what they do. And they're all like leaping forward to help people get into this role. Another huge, and I call her my cheerleader, Zooey. She is somebody in the pre-sales collective that I met because I think when I first started interviewing, actually, I noticed I was keeping track of how many places I was applying to and how many engagements I was getting through my application. And I noticed a lot of people were seeing my resume, but I wasn't getting a lot of calls back, which made me feel like, all right, there's something on my resume that doesn't reflect the things I can do enough for them to call me back. So I'm going to need somebody to help me rewrite my resume or take a look at my resume and see what's wrong. So I actually put that in the pre-sales collective chat on Slack. And I was like, is anybody able to, help me look at my resume and, help me rewrite it to get some tips and things like that. And immediately, like, there were like 5 people, all people who like were instrumental in helping me even land this role and prepare for this role that I have at HubSpot. Zooey was like the first one. She was like, hey, I'm reaching out. I saw what you posted. I want to help you out. Send me your resume. I rewrite resumes all the time. I'm actually switching to pre-sales as well. And she just got a really, really cool role at a company. I think, I don't remember what company, but she, Insight, right. Gainsight. And she's totally excited because she just landed a role too. But the things that she helped me with, she was just like cheering me on, like, you're going to kill this interview. You're going to do this. She helped me with my resume and everything like that. So the things that I got help with, and I was constantly tweaking every interview that I had, if it didn't work out, I was asking the recruiters, hey, I'm always trying to refine myself. Like, what is it that I could have done better that would have made me a better candidate for this position? And they would always tell me. And I would just use that information to just tweak. And before I knew it, I felt as though I was already thinking and speaking like a sales engineer, to the point where even my questions that I would ask in the interview would speak to my experience as a sales engineer. So, and I think that's important, particularly because that's what a sales engineer does. Ask really good questions. So,
yeah. Wow. And okay. And I know you spoke about this, how did you practice and prepare for interviews?
I think this is my favorite part of the conversation so far. I think this is because so much work went into this. Anybody who's aspiring to be a sales engineer, I want you to know, like, it's not, these aren't retail jobs, like, if they're going to pay you 6 figures, you have to prepare for these interviews. You understand? Like, the upside and the security and the job itself, there's so much to it that they need to make sure that you can handle these things. So if they need to make sure that you can handle these things, you need to make sure you can handle these things, which means you have to prepare for these interviews. So mock interviews. Sometimes, even if I didn't have questions to ask a sales engineer who I was trying to network with, I would simply ask them, hey, would you mind doing a mock interview with me? Especially if they were a hiring manager. And you never know, because if your mock interview goes well, that hiring manager is thinking, okay, this is going well. This guy might actually be a really good candidate for, you know what, I'm going to get you in touch with my recruiter. I'm going to get them to check some boxes off on you. We might be able to move you through the process, or we might have a small internship for you. You never know. So being prepared all the time. So how do you be prepared? One, again, become a subject matter expert on the role. You need to be able to, even if you don't know what that company does, which there should be no reason why you apply for a company and you don't know what they do. But even if you don't know what they do, generally, I think you need to know what the role of a sales engineer is, and you can speak to it. I think having really, really good questions to ask is really, really important. In order to know what questions to ask, you have to know what a sales engineer does. I think some of my favorite questions to ask during the interview was, what does a person who starts in this position, what does the career development look like for them? How many SEs do you guys have right now? And how many AEs do each of them support? Everybody wants a 1-to-1 ratio of SE to AE, but ideally, how many AEs do you guys want each SE to support? Being able to ask these kinds of questions means, okay, you know what this job entails. So having really good questions to ask, doing mock interviews, and really just brushing shoulders with actual SEs that do this on a daily basis literally just prepares you. It gets you talking like an SE. It gets you in the mindset of an SE. That way, once you kind of hone in on the company that you want to apply for, you're really kind of just displaying to them that you can handle this role and you are an SE and a good fit for this particular role at this particular company. So, I would say just keep it to those three things: prepare, ask good questions, and just talk to SEs.
Cool. So, you said that. Now to go into this next one, to deep down dive in this one, how do you conduct yourself in an interview?
How do I conduct myself? I have to be completely honest. Tech companies are getting younger and younger. You know what I mean? So even, I did one interview where somebody was like, they were telling me about another interview, and they were like, the guy had on a suit and they didn't understand that. I was like, wow, you get what I mean? Like wearing a suit was weird for you. The guy was wearing a suit and that was weird for you. And you were like that was, and this is what they told me. They said that means that they didn't look us up and they didn't understand the culture. The reason why this is important is because what I'm starting to notice is that a lot of companies are actually focusing more so on, are you a good culture fit? A lot of the skills that you'll learn on the job. A lot of the skills you'll learn on the job, and a lot of stuff they'll have to teach you anyway, whether you say you know how to do it or not. Of course, knowing how to do it is a big plus, but culture fit is so important for interviews. So I think that when you can connect with the person you're interviewing with, and they can see themselves relating to you, I will say that conducting myself in the interview towards the end, it became, is this person, I feel like they were thinking, is this person are they going to have a student mentality? And are they a good person to work with? If you have those three things, even when I was building my sales teams, I always boiled it down to these three things: work environment, growth, and compensation, right? And I would even ask in the interview, can you rank these three things? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just, I want to know what's important to you, right? I would look at their resume. Oh, I've been at this job for this long. Okay, tell me what you liked about it. Here's the thing. Any job that you loved, I don't know what the science is, man, but any job you loved, you probably had a really great relationship with the supervisor. Every job you hated, you probably really did not have a good relationship with the supervisor. Mm-hmm. So you start to see how much work culture plays effect in that. So as far as your question goes, how do you conduct yourselves in an interview? I think being yourself is the most authentic answer I can give you, particularly because they don't want somebody who's going to be all posh and overly professional in the interview, and then you start and you're not who they thought you were. Like that's so being your most authentic self, I think, is the most authentic answer I can give you.
Yeah, that was a paradigm shift for me because when I crossed over into this, especially when I was applying for software engineering jobs a couple of years out of, a couple of years ago when I got out of the boot camp, the software boot camp, like to know that, you could wear jeans in some companies, you could wear maybe just a button up. It depends on obviously the company, but just to hear that, like, again, this is something new, was new for me, and I'm assuming going to
Yeah.
be a lot of people who are making that jump over because maybe for in my area was coming from like wearing suits, wearing the corporate dress, obviously because that was what was appropriate. But what about HubSpot? Like, what was the dress code for an interview there?
Well, it wasn't this, right? I wasn't wearing a beanie and a Prince Purple Rain shirt. I'll tell you
Although it's
that.
cool, although it's cool.
Um, but right, I would I'll say that I wore a polo shirt, or a button-down shirt with the top button not buttoned. It definitely wasn't suit and tie. I would say just casual clothes. Actually, like if I had to give it a word for it. Now, I'm not saying at all like don't wear suit and ties. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want anybody to be like, oh, this guy got lucky and he shouldn't have a job. But what I'm saying is look up the company. If you can see their culture, like go to their website, see what they're wearing on the daily basis. Like, all right, there's a guy in, a polo shirt and some joggers. Like, obviously it's very, very relaxed. HubSpot just happens to be a company that one amazing, like as far as caring about their employees. Some of the like we have mental health days. Like that's insane to me. Like there are not a lot of companies that think that that's a thing. They just want to work you to the bone and you have to be overly professional all the time. And that's okay for those companies. I mean, if they're paying you a lot of money, yeah, do please wear a suit and tie. Please, if that's what they require for your demos, you need to show up and be like I'm sure there will probably be some that for my demos, I'll have to be in a certain tie for. But the reason, and I know dressing is not the focus of this question, it's more so the culture. But if you can look up the company and you can get an idea of the culture, you'll know exactly how to conduct yourself. So look up the company's values. I would say that would speak to how you need to conduct yourself.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't want to take this out, but any other tips or advice around this whole thing? Like any other things that you may want to say that we may not have spoken about?
I think that you my story is very, very unique. But a mentor told me until your dissatisfaction reaches a certain level, that is when you will change. You understand what I mean?
Wow.
This role, yes, I stumbled upon it, but the reason why I went from zero, knowing nothing, to being here right now in 6 months is because my dissatisfaction level for where I was in life was really, really high. Some people aren't making changes in their life yet because their dissatisfaction level for what they're doing hasn't reached a high enough level for them to do something about it. So the question is, how dissatisfied are you? My answer was I was incredibly dissatisfied. And I'm saying all this to say, if you want something, you literally have to grind for it. And I think that, the manager that was interviewing me at HubSpot, as she got to understand my story as well, I think she saw that. And that was the reason why she felt I was a good fit. After my final interview, actually, I only had one question for her. And that was, what are your goals? She's stepping into a new role as a manager. And I wanted to make sure that I'm aligning myself with someone, not just the company now, someone who I can align myself with her goals as well. If she's going to be my supervisor. particularly because I have momentum right now. Like, I'm dissatisfied with life. I want to know that you have goals that will keep us as a team moving, and moving. And the point, I'm sorry, I'm riffing right now, but the point that I want to make is it's easier said than done, but this process was easy, but it was a lot of work. Not hard work, but it was a lot of work. And it's only going to make sense if you have your goals in front of you. You know exactly why you feel like you need to get through this process. So you're going to grind. At one point, it got so crazy that I created a spreadsheet for people I made contact with, the company, the potential salary, and the tech that they're doing, and then notes on where I was in the interview process. This spreadsheet got huge. And at one point, there were 5 companies that I was doing work for, and I was getting stressed out. Like, it's like, dang, I had to sit through this 4-hour training. I don't even work for this company. I got to come up with a 45-minute presentation, and this is just like step 2 in the interview process. Goodness gracious! But if your why is so sound and you really want this, you're gonna do it, and you're not gonna, even if they don't go with you and they choose somebody with more experience. Let me tell you something. You're going to do it, and you're going to chalk that up as experience. So it's either you learn or it works out, but it's never a wasted opportunity, because I have such a sales background. This is my first role as an SE. I don't, even my resume at the top, it said solutions engineer, but none of my roles were solutions engineer. And I would try to get in front of that. You need to be okay with the fact that you don't have experience. You know what I mean? And if you don't have experience, you need to get in front of that and say, look, I might not have experience as an SE, but I do have if you would agree that the role of an SE is an integrated role, then I would tell you that I have all of these skills that are transferable from these other pieces of experience that I've had that will contribute to what would make a really, really great SE for you. And being able to just think like that will just allow. So you really need to market yourself differently. And I promise you, if you become a subject matter expert on the role first, you'll start to align yourself with how you fit into this role. And poof, you'll literally have your trump card anytime you need it.
The Tony Moze Podcast.